So the season's over. In case you didn't know, season's completely done. We had a roller coaster of a season, and I'm not just talking about 125, which was an even bigger roller coaster in Kansas City. But it was honestly a great season. Like it was a ton of fun. There was a ton of parody. There was some trash talk. There, I mean, I think we had everything in between. I mean, we had double birds and splits this year. It was incredible to watch every single weekend. Kansas City certainly did not disappoint. I will also go on record and say it was amazing, and Kansas City should host more. I think the only thing that sucked about Kansas City was that it got cold some days, but like that's just NCAAs where they will probably never. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but most likely we're always going to be in a cold climate during NCAAs. So it's not going to be in the Bahamas, right? So
That'd be awesome, though.
that would be amazing, but
Miami.
I don't see it happening. We'll see. I did hear that maybe Atlanta is and like a couple other like warm weather schools are in the mix for what is it after
26.
2026 and 2027, something like that. So hopefully we'll get it. But no, like this season was great. Kansas City was awesome. I did not go out until the last night where Claunch and I went out and had some beers and hung out and saw a ton of people. Grant Lee, Nick Simmons, like it was awesome to see everybody that was out in that, in the Power and Light, which was great atmosphere, was right across the street from the venue. Hotels were within walking distance. I mean, there was a casino that I know a lot of people ended up staying at too. And I mean, that was probably like an Uber ride away. I think it was like 10, 15 minutes from the stadium in a car. But like it was just great. Like it was honestly awesome. You just saw so many people, so many coaches. You were able to mix and mingle with so many different people. But it was a great atmosphere. Completely different from Tulsa last year. Wasn't the biggest fan of Tulsa last year. Detroit was all right, but I honestly loved Kansas City this year. Launch, what was your thoughts on Kansas City being the host?
I mean, everything you said is completely true, right? I kept thinking, okay, well, maybe tonight I'll go check out some other areas or see what else is out there. And then I just kept finding new places in like the Power and Light area. I was like, oh, they've got like a piano bar. That's cool. Oh, they got this pizza place in the corner. All right. Oh, they got this like club here at the top. And then the whole time there's live music until midnight and like the basketball games behind them. So it was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna just and it's across the street from the venue. So it was like you literally walked out, people just funneled in there. I mean, I don't remember seeing any like issues, any fights, any
Mm.
like problems. It was a really positive, upbeat area with your who's who of wrestling kind of walking around and chilling out. So yeah, man, it was a blast. I completely concur. And then, again, 5 minute walk back to the hotel. So
Yeah, it was simple and easy. Obviously, if you wanted to venture out of that spot, you could, but like the street was blocked off right in front of the venue, so you didn't have to worry about people coming up and down the street. Actually, multiple streets in that entire quad was blocked off, and you didn't have to worry about getting hit by a car. So like, it was awesome. It was honestly awesome. And you had everybody mixing and mingling. Iowa fans, Iowa State fans, Oklahoma, like everybody was just like right there, just walking up and down the street. So yeah, I zero complaints for Kansas City. Thought it was dope. Hope it goes back there again. For a town or for a city that doesn't have basketball team or a hockey team, having that venue right there, Power and Light, like it was perfect. For the tournament's sake, loved it. As I said, there was a ton of parity, as we know, the entire season. 125 was just craziness up and down. I mean, and the 8 seed ended up winning the bracket, which honestly, I wouldn't have said you were crazy if anybody picked Richie Figs going into the tournament. Because if you look at his draw, very possible for him to do what he did. And, you look up and down the bracket, and the number one guy all year was never the number one guy. I think, what was it?
Mhm.
Once we got to the semis, three of the four guys that were in the semis had the number one ranking at some point in the year. Noto, Figs, Ayala were all ranked number one. Ramos ended up losing to Noto, another number one ranked guy. Braden Davis ended up losing to Figueroa. So, like, the top guys, everybody was just knocking each other off like left and right at 125. So I was certainly not surprised that Figs won. I was surprised that he won in the margin that he did, 7-2 over Ayala, after being very close with Noto, very close with Davis, 1 point matches by, wins in the quarters and the semis, and then his tactics, I guess, if you want to call them, of, giving ground, using his slickness, they worked, especially against, I mean, let's call it Iowa. Iowa's bunch of grinders are going to come forward. They're going to pressure you. And, he used that to his advantage. Definitely looked like stalling, but, you know, it is a style to not want to come forward. It is a style to circle more, to give ground, to hand fight and give ground, lure a guy in and fire off a shot off of his pressure. I mean, we've seen it a ton of times. Ja'Cory Teamer does it too. I mean, maybe it is an Arizona State thing. Um, I think even Zahid, there were times where he was up against Mark Hall and he would give some ground and fire off a shot. So, you know, Zeke Jones is a great tactical guy. He's great game planning, and I think Figueroa did very well up against Ayala to kind of outslick him and knew what he was bringing to the table. So for that, I, tip my hat to Figueroa, because he was 500 at one point in the season, fought some injury, knocked off from being number one guy coming in. Like, it was a roller coaster for him all year, and ends up being the most consistent. And, he's another NCAA champion. So I thought his performance was absolutely amazing. I think each one of us had Ayala in the finals, so no real big surprise there. But that top half, you really knew that it was anybody's game. What did you guys notice, Robbie? I mean, you guys weren't there, but, like, what did you guys notice watching the 125-pound bracket?
I mean, it was wild as expected. Few people really stood out. Like, there were some upsets in the first round just to, open up, that were big. Um, and just kind of kept rolling from there. Super impressed with Caleb Smith. That was kind of my takeaway of the tournament. I mean, he was really close to making the semis. Went to tiebreakers with Barnett, and he just looked fantastic the whole tournament. I was really, really impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, very close with the top guys. I mean, he beat Stanich 4-1, sudden victory. Another, tiebreaker loss to Barnett, where he was so close to getting out. Barnett did a really good job just hanging tough in there.
Was that the locked hands review?
Yeah. Yep, that was the locked hands review. I mean, there were a couple of them, two of which went to Dayton Fix.
See which one.
At 133. But yeah, there was another one there for Barnett against Smith, and, but Smith was very good. He adopted, and this is something that you guys don't see from not being there. He adopted his warm up from, what match was it? The Michigan match, I think, the Augustino match, where he's warming up in his singlet, just going hard 30 minutes before his match. Just only guy on the mats in full. It probably there's probably even wearing a singlet at that point, just going hard, going hard. And it seemed to pan out. I mean, I think we'll probably see it from him, next year too. But, awesome kid, gave a really good interview after beating Stanich. So yeah, it was really cool to see. Austin, any thoughts at 125?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys said. Really roller coaster. Who's going to come out on top? You could have wrestled that bracket 100 times and had 100 different results, right? But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, me being the IWA guy, I was following Stanich a lot and guys like Unger. I tweeted about it too. Stanich losing the round of 16. In order to All American, he had to beat Dean Peterson, who was round of 12 last year. He had to beat Camacho from NC State, who was previously number one. And then to get to the blood round, he had to beat Ramos of Purdue. who was obviously runner-up last year. And then Stanich was gonna he won that match in the blood round, and he was wrestling the winner of Davis, who was the top seed, and Volk, who was the 5. So just that blood round section, you had Ramos, Stanich, Davis, and Volk, which is like, 4 top 5 guys. 2 of them didn't even place, which, I mean, like you said, we kind of expected that, but to see it come out like that was really crazy, man. A lot of close matches, a lot of obviously one takedown matches. It was some good wrestling on the backside too.
Yeah, and then he ends up avenging his loss to Smith to place 5th.
Yeah.
So, the loss that sent him there, he ends up avenging that. So that's got to be a really good feeling.
He probably weighed about 150 at that point, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was probably feeling really good. I think the match with Smith on the front side, it was right off the scale, 2 hours off the scale, and as it happens. So when you're fully hydrated and full of pasta at that point, you're gonna have some heavy hips. Kevin, you were mostly while we were there. You were in the tunnel a ton. The both of us were in the tunnel a ton during that first round. So like we saw some matches, but we were in the tunnels getting interviews and stuff like that. But like, what were some of the things that you noticed at 125? I guess from a Big Ten standpoint that stood out.
From a Big Ten standpoint, I mean, well, the first thing I need to say is, my dude D'Agostino lost his first round match to Caleb Smith. And then he lost again pretty quickly. He beat Tyler Klinsky of Ryder, but then he lost to Unger of Cornell. So this is still... No, this is not Thursday anymore. That was Friday morning.
Yeah,
but point being, then he shows up later that day and like he'd gotten a haircut and completely shaved his face. And I was like, I think that's D'Agostino. And I'm so pissed I didn't get a picture of it. But he's a super nice guy, so I was bummed about that. But early on, man, I mean, as far as the Big Ten went, like Braden Davis looked really good. I was excited for McKee. Across the board, shout out to Eric Barnett. I mean, he got the first fall of the tournament against Tanner Jordan, who eventually was an All-American, right? To pin a All-American, and shout out to Tanner Jordan. In fact, 125 had Tanner Jordan and Jory Volk, who both lost first round and battled all the way back to become All-Americans. So shout out to those guys as well. But this isn't really a first day thing, but with Barnett beating Smith, that was one of the funny things from the interview after the fact was he goes, I don't know why they took down.
Yeah.
Like that's been my whole career that's where I make my whole career is on top. And they chose down and he wrote him out the entire second period, I think it was. And it was like, that ended up being the match. Or the reason it went to tiebreakers to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, just at 125, Big Ten did really well. They looked good. They wrestled well. I mean, it's you lose in the finals. That's still something to be happy with.
Yeah, and I mean, the funny thing about this season and how much parity we talked about is that there was even like historical parity, right? Like the last time Arizona State won a title at 125, it was Iowa versus Arizona State, and it was Robles beating McDonough. The only other thing was Arizona State and Penn State meeting at, 57, but this time Penn State gets the win, right? Or, Teamer losing to Haynes. The last time that was Bubba Jenkins pinning David Taylor.
Yep.
So a ton of like parity historically, which was really cool. And I'm working on an article just like looking through some of the series that we saw throughout the year that we put to bed now. Obviously Carl O'Toole is done, and Hidley versus Brooks is done, and we're not going to get any more McKee versus Barnett. So I think there might be a couple others that we had seen over the years that are now kind of put to bed. But yeah, 125 was an absolute roller coaster. You really never knew who was going to win and who was going to come out on top. It didn't matter seeding wise who was the higher seed. And what the thing that stood out to me is you started to see guys not so much shut down their offenses, but like other guys turn up their defenses and shut down these guys that have been like super dynamic, right? And, you know, we saw Braden Davis take a lot of guys down throughout the year when he was undefeated and kind of under the radar before becoming the guy at Penn State to take 125. He didn't score any takedowns after the second round that I had on the front side. I mean, so he won 2-1 over Unger and then ended up actually losing to Figueroa in the next round. So like his offense really shut down. And I think the same thing may have happened to him at Big Tens as well, where he got in those later rounds and it became harder for him to score. You know, he ended up winning, but like he wasn't scoring the same way that he was. So that was something that kind of stood out to me, is like he wasn't firing off as many shots later in those rounds. And obviously it's really hard to score against these guys. You know, it's really, really hard to score against Figueroa, and you know, scoring against Unger isn't easy. I think him and Unger went to rideouts as well, right? Or close to going to a rideout. It didn't go to overtime, but it was like a rideout that made the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the best guys were able to score takedowns. That was the deciding factor that you see up and down, right? Ayala was able to score takedowns to make the finals. That was the biggest thing. Figueroa was able to score takedowns to win, and he also shut down Ayala to win. So like if you are not able to score a takedown, I mean, we can jump right into 133. If you were not able to score a takedown, it didn't bode well for you, you know, and we look at 133, Dayton Fix hasn't ever in all of the finals ever scored a takedown in the finals. He was there 4 times and no takedowns, right? Like that was like super apparent, you know, and Vito looked like old Vito again, and he was ready to go, you know, and he talked about his neck injury. He gave me kind of the inside scoop off the record of what went down and what went on, but he also, you know, in our interview talked about it was a neck injury and, you know, what was bothering him and how you know, the network at Cornell was huge for him to get healthy, and he was no longer afraid to shoot. One thing that he said was that he was afraid to shoot at EIWAs. He didn't want to stick his head back in there because he didn't want to get injured again. And then it was between EIWAs and the NCAA tournament that he gained that confidence back and was able to fire off shots the way that needed to be. And when real Vito showed up, nobody else had anything to say. And it was ultra apparent. So, you know, jumping into 133, man, and I've mentioned Fix already, but to see somebody that is as offense minded, or somebody that came into the NCAA as offense minded with an inside trip and high level moves like that inside trip or like his leg attacks, and to see it like dwindle and like shut down against these guys late, it sucks to see. It's like what's happening late, and not because he wasn't firing off shots, because against Frost he was winning on the shots. Like he had taken more shots than Frost, which was surprising to me that Frost took neutral in that overtime period, because he hadn't taken any shots at that point.
Mm-hmm.
All those shots were Dayton, but Dayton couldn't score. He couldn't finish on his shots. He was in on a leg multiple times. I think he took like 6 or 7 shots during that entire match, but he just could not finish. And then the same thing can be said when he took on Ragusin. He was shooting, he was in on a leg, but he just couldn't score. You know, up against Vito, he was able to scramble out of that position and get in on a leg, but he just couldn't finish. Right. So like, I don't think that, first of all, I don't think that him being booed and turned into a villain the way he was okay. I don't think it was. I understand that people are like, oh, well, he took PEDs, or, oh, he's 26. There's 3 other guys in the tournament that graduated the exact same year that he did. The guy that he wrestled in the finals was 7 years out of high school as well. So like, spare me.
Ooh.
Like, exactly. Like, spare me that, right? Like, like spare me on those things of him being boring or whatever else. Like I went back and I watched the matches. He is shooting, he's just not finishing. So they're low scoring matches, and that's why it's like, man, he's very strategic, but he's not able to score. Um,
I
but
think to
like,
me the frustration and this, I mean, I wasn't there. I didn't feel what it was like in the arena, but the read that I got on it was more of that. It was a frustration with the situations that he seemed
mhm,
to continually find himself in and seemed
yeah,
to continually benefit from. That was really what, turned people against him. Not necessarily him, but kind of overall the feeling. Like, there's always the feel that John and Coleman are going to get reviews even if they don't ask for them. There's the feeling that, that orange singlet makes a big deal to the refs and they're going to get the calls that they want. So I mean, a lot of that plays into it, and then the suspension that plays into it as well.
mhm,
And then just the difference. I mean, his first round match, it was a 17-0 or 17-1 tech fall. He scored more points in his first match than he did the rest of the tournament
just the
combined.
tournament. Yeah,
Mhm.
So we know what he's capable of. And then to see kind of shut down like that, it's I think from my perspective, it's frustrating to see the levels of it when you know what he can do,
yes,
and then feeling like he's relying on getting bailed out in situations. And I think
yes,
that's more of what the feeling was, at least from outside. I mean, if people were booing him, that's ridiculous in itself. But I think booing people is fucking stupid. But
yeah,
um,
That's
I think
kind
it
of
was more situational on my side.
yeah, that's kind of what Vito said in his post-match interview, I think, with Quint on ESPN.
Oh yeah, Quint.
Yeah, he just kind of said,
Boo.
Vito said it felt like they didn't want me to win that match, and
yeah,
they meaning whoever refs, fans, whoever, whatever that they is, but and he just said, I wanted to win, I knew I was going to win, so I won, and just the way he said that, I felt like they wanted me to lose. It's kind of piggyback what Robbie said, Fix is always kind of in these situations where, the call goes his way. Oh, the call went his way again. And he ends up winning by a point all the time. It's just, I think that was part of the frustration. And again, I wasn't there either. Was the booing more towards the refs of, hey, you guys blew that call, or booing, the coaches for throwing these stupid challenges that turned out to be benefit? I don't know, but I feel like sometimes that's part of it too.
And Kevin, they were not saying Boo Earns.
They were not saying Boo Earns. I said Boo Earns. Um, yeah, I mean it didn't feel like they were booing the refs, even if some people were, right? Like the feeling there was not that. So, um, you know, it sucks because he had such a great career, I mean, and it still does, right? Is obviously going to be at the trials and obviously going to be looking to make another world team and to go win another world medal, So I don't think this is gonna impact him too badly. I think if anything, maybe it just fuels the fire and he gets right back after it and starts cutting some weight.
yeah, yeah. It was. I think they were pissed off at Dayton. He was turned into a villain for those reasons, right? The suspension. They think he's too old. You should be out of college at this point. And then the challenges. Um, but the challenges were correct. Like there was locked hands by Ragusan. There was locked hands by Vito. Um, the challenge that they had against Ragusan also was the drop down. Dayton let go, so the count has to restart. So
Yeah,
it
that one was frustrating there because the interpretation and the emphasis is supposed to be that you can't game the rule, and that was clearly
yes,
gaming the rule, and that was what they were trying to say, and that wasn't getting overturned.
yeah,
And we could go on for hours about that in itself, but
yeah. But no, I mean, he was turned into a villain. I saw his girlfriend's tweet where she even said, like, I couldn't even wear like my Dayton pin, and I was, getting shit for that. Like, that's not okay,
Yeah,
So,
that
it's the
sucks.
only pen he got.
but like honestly, like it just it sucks for that, right? Like I just think it was uncalled for. But okay, back to the wrestling. You're right. He didn't score. Every match after that first one was a 1-point match. Beats Buzakis by 1 point, beats Frost by 1 point, beats Ragusin by 1 point. It just wasn't the person that, like you said, that we saw in the first round that went out there, scored 17 points in 7 minutes and was out of there. The other side of that, Vito looked like Vito, and it was awesome.
Vito was damn impressive.
He was extremely impressive. I would say he was not as impressive as he was last year, probably because he knocked off NCAA finalists and champions on his way to winning an NCAA title. But he looked like old Vito, where he was ready to scrap. He was sticking his head in there. I mean, hell, there was a headbutt that he just blew Dayton out of bounds. Like, he was just fearless, especially in that final. And the challenges made it even worse. Obviously, the match with Crookham was like, well, holy shit! Like, this is real Vito. And he said in his presser afterwards, he was like, I can't let him get his offense started. He gave Crookham his props, said that kid's going to be very, very good, but like, he was just like, wow. Austin, what
He
did
also
you?
said, "You stand here. Put your foot on this line."
Yeah. Stay here. Austin, what did you think of the all EIWA third round battle between Crookham and Vito?
Yeah, I mean, after seeing Crookham, his first 2 matches, they were a little closer, and the way Vito was kind of laying it on some good wrestlers, it's like, yeah, I don't know if Crookham's going to win this one again, just because, like you said, Vito looked like the old Vito, and he was out there scoring a ton of points, and like you talked about, there was something wrong with his neck, and I just got that vibe from him at EIWAs. He just didn't look right the way he even warmed up. He was a little stiff, and even in his stance, he was up higher. To me, just looked different at EIWAs, and again, Crookham squeaked that one out with a takedown in the third. But I mean, yeah, like Vito blew the doors open this one. It wasn't even close. Yeah, it was a little bit of a heartbreaker if you're a Lehigh fan. But Crookham came back and wrestled third. He beat Nasir Bailey twice in that tournament. Another true freshman there. But yeah, 133 again, just really good weight class. A lot of tough wrestlebacks as well, and glad to see Crookham, right to that ship, ended up in third place, and you got 2 freshmen there, third and fourth. Probably going to be the top 2 guys for the near future here as the senior citizens leave the bracket and Fix and Vito.
Yeah, Vito bonused his way to the finals, all major decisions until he hit Fix.
Yeah, a lot of points.
Yeah, he was ultra dynamic, and that was awesome to see. Yes, Nasir Bailey, love him. Patting myself on the back for saying on New Year's Eve he would be their first All-American, and calling that was amazing to honestly see. And I hope he stays at Little Rock. That's what I will say about that. Kev,
Yes.
any thoughts around 133?
Yeah, they're not really wrestling related, but so I'm gonna pull the curtain back a little bit. That'll be some of my insights. In the back where you're trying to get people coming off of the semis, like you're also trying to kind of watch the semis, but the TVs were just far enough down the wall to where this old man would yell at you every time you got close, and you were just like, dude, there's a TV there. We've had this conversation at every weight. Can I just watch it? Can I just, like, there's scores there too. It would benefit me to see. You've seen me do this for days now, buddy.
Yeah.
Can we figure this out? So yeah, props to that guy. No, in general, I know that the Battle of Dillon's was super fun. I was glad that Ragusin was able to get that win back. And in his interview there, he said, hey, that guy's not 15 points better than me. I know that. I really wanted that match back. And that was the first time that he was an All-American too. So I was excited to see him there. And yeah, he was. Yeah, both the Dillons were the only Big Ten representatives in the All-American side, the 2 Big Ten finalists. So shout out to them.
Yeah. They that match, you could tell that Ragusin wanted that match. Ragusin was just like super duper focused the entire time. Like, it was a different focus for him, and that was the impressive part for me. Robbie, your boy Kai was on the losing end of a or Arujao offensive attack. What did you think of that? Did you think it would be closer?
I
Hurricane
did.
Rujao.
I was I was surprised. I mean, to me, that just kind of highlighted how Vito was on another level this tournament. Kai was kind of hit and miss the whole tournament. He had some great matches and some kind of weird ones. Ended up back on the podium, which is great. Um, that loss to Vito was not enjoyable. Great win first round. Really close win over Van D to get to Vito. And then on the backside, he went 1-2. He beat Nagao, which was the second ACC guy to beat Nagao in the blood round, and then lost to Bailey, also the second ACC guy to lose to Bailey, and then lost to Shaver, lost to Shaver for seventh. So not I expected him a little higher on the podium, but good tournament overall. Marlon Yarbo had an awesome first round match and really put it on Nagao. Was really excited about that, and he just didn't look the same. Looked okay in the Bailey match, but then the second day he just didn't have the same pop, didn't look the same, and kind of went out pretty quick. Same to be said again for Sam. He lost Latona lost first round to App State kid. What's his name? Oakley.
Oakley, right? Yeah.
Yeah, lost a close one to Oakley. Just didn't finish the last takedown that normally I would expect him to finish, and then went 1-2 on the backside, and just or I guess 2-2 on the backside. Lost to Wells and sudden victory for Minnesota, and just wasn't his tournament. So I'm very interested to see what he does, because he's got another year he can use. He's got some soul searching to do. I tried to get a little feel of how he's feeling, and not quite sure what to make of it. I mean, I know he's there for Caleb. He was celebrating with him, which was awesome, but I think it was a tough spot for him to go, from being a two-time All-American to not making the podium again. So I'm interested to see kind of how that all shakes out this summer.
The interesting one for me was Nagao not placing after being the guy that everyone thought was gonna do something, right? Like, and it was a big deal that he left Minnesota to go to Penn State and everything else, and he regressed, right? Like, I mean, we'll get to it because him and Bernie Truax both leaving their schools and going to Penn State, and neither one of them did as well as they did at their old schools. But
People don't forget.
I was very surprised that Nagao didn't place. And I was watching the Stalemates podcast earlier today, and I even talked to Adam Fellers, who's on that with Zach Bogle, and he made a point about Nagao and how when you're at a place like Minnesota, obviously it's a big school, but in that room, you're the confident guy. You're the guy that you're getting some good scraps probably with McKee and maybe one other guy that's around your weight class. But then you go to Penn State and everyone is very good. And essentially you're getting your ass kicked and it kills your confidence. And I mean, he made that point. Obviously, I don't know how true that is, but like I think it was a good point because you're in that room. You're in the room with a bunch of sharks, like a bunch of giant freaking sharks. So you're either going to become a shark yourself or blood in the water. And with him not placing, it was just like, man, what happened, right? What took place? Because he was supposed to come in and continue to keep this All-American streak at 133 going. I don't think anybody expected him to be Roman Bravo Young, but they also didn't expect him to not be on the podium after doing what he did last year in Tulsa, matching up with Dayton Fix the way that he did. And then this year, not having that happen. So that was what the interesting one for me is, like him not placing.
You could make the argument. I mean, Wells at Minnesota did just as well. No pun intended. He did make the blood round and actually had a closer blood round match to being on the podium. Which I thought was interesting. Funny though about that point, we used to make the same point about on blood round. Tommy and I used to say about the year that Gilman and Corey Clark came in to Iowa, McDonough just did not look the same. That was his last year. And I don't know if maybe that was just being a senior 125 cutting weight, or if all of a sudden he was getting worked a little bit more than he normally was in practice. But yeah, good theory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought
so I
so.
was talking to someone else too about that along the same lines. Last year, Nagel was maybe a little under the radar,
Mhm.
right? Kind of snuck in the All American, and now he's at Penn State. Talk of the offseason. Everyone knows him. There's more tape on him. You know, you got a little more focus on what his weaknesses are. You know, so again, maybe that's something to do with it too. Just being in the limelight a lot more at Penn State, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if he said I love you to my teammates afterwards.
He did start the season late, so he did have that injury, so I'll give him kind of that. So he did come off of some injury, but man, like you just expected more from a guy who kind of had everybody's attention with who he was matching up with and how he was matching up with them a season ago, and what was expected of him coming into that lineup. You don't join that lineup without some sort of pressure, some sort of, expectation. So that really stuck out to me for him to not place. But hey, it happened, and we'll see kind of what happens next year, who they put in at 133. I think Robert Howard still has some time left at Penn State. Um, who knows if he ends up entering the transfer portal, and nobody's said anything about him leaving, because 125 was definitely his weight class and that's where he wanted to be, and I don't see anybody taking that away from Braden Davis anymore, at least for the next couple of years. So who knows, maybe Robert Howard bumps up to 33. Maybe there is some sort of change there, but um
Isn't
yeah, just
Nagel a sophomore?
what's that?
Isn't Nagel a sophomore?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Who knows if he remains the guy? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
he didn't show it late in the season that he could really man that spot with, after coming off a season where he was an All-American.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
You're expected to be an All-American all the time, I would think, in that lineup. So, 125 and 133 end up coming up short for Penn State. And then the rest of the lineup just did what they did. But yeah, that was the interesting thing for me there. 141, I think we all had this final and maybe all picked the same guy. I mean, I remember having Mendez and Bartlett making the final and picking Mendez. So yeah, I think we all were in agreement for most of the things that we saw at this weight class. I think we all had Mendez. I'm sure Kevin was probably the only one that had Mendez wrestling Lemley instead of Hardy beating Lemley again. But yeah, I think everything kind of planned out essentially the way that we thought that it would, minus Echemendia beating Jack, who, Robbie, I'm pretty sure you had Jack winning that match, but we all agreed that it was going to be a Mendez Bartlett rematch, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. And the thing here for me, though, was Bo Bartlett was a different animal last weekend completely. Pins, turns. I mean, when he came into his interview after the semifinal, he was like, the first thing he said was, "Man, that was fun." He was like, "I cannot believe that I got a turn in college in folk style." He's like, "I don't get turns in folk style. Like I cannot believe that happened." Right. So like he was a different animal the entire weekend. And I was like, was he just saving up all this offensive ammo until he got to Kansas City and then unleashed it on everyone? So I think he had the most pins for Penn State. I mean, it was only two, but like incredible weekend for Bo Bartlett. But like Jesse Mendez, man, he looked good from start to finish. Tech fall, pin, and then a bunch of decisions, but you know, nobody was really even truly there against him. Echemendia made it interesting, looking for that double unders trip late, but like the standing Granby and coming out with a double to win the match in the finals was awesome. Kevin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I had Woods in the finals against Mendez, but hey, same champ, so I'll take that. But no, he was awesome, man. He was awesome from start to finish. I mean, I think most of us saw the highlights of Brock Hardy on the what show was that? I don't watch that show. I like
The
it though.
Barstool show.
Yeah, the Barstool show with the Barstool guys. I couldn't think of the name. Um, And so, I'll bring it up. The Splato, like I literally texted my buddies, like, I can't see anybody getting in front of him. And then I think as soon as I texted that, Hardy got a reversal, and I was like, I just jinxed it. And then I was like, wait, no, I didn't. Nope. Now he's gonna sit there like that for a minute, 45 seconds. But no, shout out to Hardy coming back and taking third place. I mean, it was an awesome bracket. There was a lot of good battles. I mean, shout out to Bo Bartlett too, man. He really did look like he was coming for it, and he was ready, and he was prepared. But it was just a fun weight class all around. Trying to think of what. Oh, that was it. Etrimendia. So another behind the curtain sort of thing. At one point, he was like warming up, and he must have done like 45 backflips.
Oh yeah, that was
Like
incredible.
it was nuts, man. He was doing these like, and he didn't seem to care if anybody was in the way. It was like the most crowded on the mat, and he was just like, here's my backflip routine, and was just like floating in the air. It was amazing. By the time I was done being like just stunned, I got my camera out to record, and he was like, it's over, just stop doing it.
Yeah.
So
he was
it was
high
amazing.
in the air. Like he would have been over my head with these backflips. It was insane.
It was incredible. He could have been a gymnast if that's what he wanted to do. He could do it tomorrow. So he's amazing.
And he's apparently moving up a couple of weight classes according to him. So
yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah. Which will be really interesting with their lineup because they have Pinheiro coming back, and we'll see what happens there. But Austin, anything from this weight class?
No, I was real high on Coder Hunt of Navy. Ended up in the round of 12, lost to Hardy. I thought he wrestled pretty well. Yeah, I'm obviously surprised the tournament was Von Bauer, right? The 26 seed he was, I believe.
Who
right?
called that? Was that you, Ryan, that called that?
Not me. I would take
Somebody
credit for
called
it,
that.
but it wasn't me.
Yeah, and it's just interesting because the night before the tournament, that bracket got changed. He was originally 27, got bumped down to 26 because Cornella was out. So it's interesting that, if they had a full 33 bracket that was originally there, would he still have AA'd, being that 27 spot? I don't know. It's just funny how things work out like that sometimes. And having a big win over Happel in the first round is, goes a long way. So, and then he made the quarters even. He had a win over Fongaro. So yeah, Von Bauer, props to him. I think he's the highest seeded AA in the entire tournament. So really cool stuff for him in Minnesota.
Quick aside on that. So I'm in the tunnel, and I'm like, I made sure to be in the tunnel that was near the blood round match there. And the reason I made sure of that is because I wanted to interview Josh Edmond, because he was wrestling in the match and was winning at the time. He's a Detroit Catholic Central kid, so I was like, I got to be there. I can't see what's going on at the time, so I'm just watching the scores on the screen there, and like it wasn't on the match, the other video, and I'm trying to figure it out, and all of a sudden the scores flip around. Now there's 9 seconds left. Long story short, it ends up going to overtime. Bauer gets the win. So on some level, I was like, I wanted to talk to Josh, but like I'm still going to do my job. I want to go talk to Vance. And I was so impressed with Vance. He was so pumped. He just had blood all in his mouth. He just looked like he was just in a full-on fight. And he talked about that. He talked about when they moved the wrestlers around, and he was like fully insulted. He was like, I just felt like a place filler, and I'm not a place filler. I'm Vance. And I was just like, that's a badass line. It's like, that's so cool. So yeah, I was super pumped for him. He just kept talking about how he failed in every year before this, and now he's like, I'm not a failure. I did it. And I was like, damn. All right, I'm glad I got this.
Yeah, that's the other thing about those TV screens. So one screen had the matches, the other screen had the scores. So like there were no, so everybody at home, you guys could watch the matches with the scoreboards and everything else. If we were in the back, and the one tunnel, we could go up the one tunnel because it would allow us to go to press row. So, and they had this identical TV setup on both sides. One TV had all the matches, the other one just had scores. So, and then in the interview room where I was at in the semis and then after the finals, there's just a TV showing the matches. So you had no idea what the scores were. So the interviews are going on. So we're doing the interviews, and Kekaizen even said it. He's like, I'm low-key watching that match. I'm sorry. And he like covered his eyes so that he could answer the question because he was watching the 197-pound match after his. And you know, you turn around, you're watching the match, you're like, I don't know who's winning, I don't know how much time is left, the period is. So you would miss the match and then have to go out in the front, and I would go out and like ask questions of like what happened. And then you guys were in the chat, so my phone is going absolutely nuts, and I would like look and see like what happened. And then I had to like piece everything together from your guys' comments to what actually happened. So like it sucked to be in. It was awesome to be in the tunnel, but it sucked to be in the tunnel because you were either trying to watch two TVs and see what the hell was going on, or you were watching one TV that just had the match and no scores. So it was rough a little bit being back there. So you just didn't really know what was happening. But
Or the first day you were getting yelled at by some lady who had no idea,
yeah,
who's like, you can't be back here. And it's like, this is the only place I can be. Okay.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Robbie, your thoughts?
I mean, good weight for the ACC. Had four guys in, contention kind of coming in that we thought maybe could be on the podium. Two of them made it. Lachlan had an awesome run with that big win over Real Woods. Really got him jacked up, and then had a loss to Bartlett in the semis. Yeah, lost to Bartlett in the semis, and then forfeited out to sixth. Talked to Tony today. Said he's still shooting to be healed up and ready for Olympic qualifiers, and that's kind of the big picture that they're looking at. But great run for him, making the podium. Ryan Jack, same thing, kind of came back after a close loss to Mendia in the quarters, and got back on the podium as well. So, or I guess made it for the first time. But overall, good weight for the ACC. Matthews lost first round. They had a couple wins and then lost out, and same thing for Crook. So, can't be too mad with two All-Americans at a weight, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that McNeil match was awesome.
That was bonkers.
It was crazy watching it. I think no, it's the next weight. But the cradle, it happened right after Bo Bartlett had locked up a cradle and got the pin over Von Bauer. So, and obviously those mats are right next to each other. So like you looked at one mat and Bo Bartlett is picking up his second pin of the tournament, and you looked right over to the left and you saw Lachlan McNeil locking up a cradle and, getting on to the next round. So, the one person I haven't spoken to yet that I wanted to talk to, and I kept missing him in the tunnels, and was Scott Green, to see like what his feelings and thoughts were on two of his guys hitting in the semifinals with Lachlan and Bo Bartlett.
I thought about that too.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Bo about it. I asked him about wrestling a high school teammate, somebody that, those matches have happened a number of times in the room. And he just said it was really cool, to have a teammate across the mat from him. And, obviously when the whistle blows, they're competitors, and that's really what it is. He said, but it was really awesome to be able to rep their school and do the things that they did this weekend. 49. Don't got to talk about the champ. That's not really that important.
Caleb,
no, I'm kidding.
Mother flipping Henson.
No, he was awesome. He was honestly awesome. He was great. I honestly loved him in the interview room, because I think it was Mike Finn that asked a question and said, and then like followed up basically with like, if you win, and I think they even clipped it, and he was like, when I win. And he said it like like so matter of factly, and I was like, this dude's a gangster, and it was awesome. Like I had never met Caleb Hansen before, but I became a fan immediately from watching him, watching how he wrestled the entire tournament. Obviously, his win over Ridge Lovett was an outlier for him, and that really frustrated him. That was definitely one thing that was apparent that I saw in that interview after that win was even though he was super happy to make the finals, he was frustrated that he only scored 1 point. Very frustrated. So, and then the next day when he came back in after winning, he was like, "I told you guys that was a complete fluke match for me. Like that is not how I like to wrestle." And um, I think his match with Austin Gomez was the best match of the finals. It had everything, and I love that they just let it fly, like absolutely just no regard, just let it absolutely fly. So that was awesome. Definitely for me, best match of the finals was Henson versus Gomez because they just went at each other, punch each other in the face for 7 minutes, scored a bunch of points, and even Henson said, I looked up and I had 15 points. Like I just was not conscious, just out there, just battling, and we asked him about some of the openings and things that he saw in the match, and he couldn't even really speak to it. He was just like, I was just going. And, that was just some unconscious wrestling, and he did so well. The match that for me was like the best one of this weight class was Jordan Williams and Caleb Bracci. That match was fireworks. And they have some history where they met in the Fargo final. Williams gets a crotch lift for an exposure with 3 seconds left to beat Rachi and win the title back in 2021. So him kicking out and then turning in right into a cradle to put Rachi on his back with very short time was reminiscent of that. It was just like absolutely crazy that it happened the exact same way, and it was the first round of the tournament, and everybody just went absolutely nuts. And Oklahoma State versus Iowa is always going to be like that, but that was awesome. Robbie, give your boy his flowers.
I mean, we've known that Caleb's going to be special. I remember going down there for it was during wrestling camp last summer, his first official year on campus. I mean, he came up and won the Hokie Open, Southeast Open. I'll always call it the Hokie Open. Won the Southeast Open as a senior in high school, and since the day he stepped on campus, he's shown that he's going to be that guy. And I remember a conversation with Roby saying, he's going to be the next champion for Virginia Tech, and I damn sure did it. And he looked great doing it. I think any match with him and Ridge is going to be funky. They're going to be low scoring. It's going to be, one little thing's going to make the difference. That's what it was at Cliff Keen. That's what it was at this one. A 1-0 match from either of them is an outlier. So, that is what it is. But he looked fantastic. Kind of side story. Every year that I don't go to NCAAs, I hang out with a bunch of my coaching buddies, and we all just have a weekend together, a guys' weekend. And this year, my wife had taken my kids on a side trip, so I left on Saturday morning and surprised them. So I actually watched this match with my boys, which was really, really cool. Because they're like, Daddy, Virginia Tech got a champ. I was like, yeah, it's awesome. Caleb's a great kid. He's going to do big things. So that was really cool for me. One, seeing Caleb win it because I love him. He's a great kid. But then getting to see that with my kids was really, really cool too. Other side of it was Arrington heartbreak. So that kind of sucked. He had a couple great wins and lost a heartbreaker to Kasich in the blood round. So that was not fun. But I can't be too upset about that when Caleb Henson is on top of the podium, and seeing him just beat the brakes off Austin Gomez was pretty fun for me. So
It was pretty awesome. Austin, your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously Kasich losing first round, coming, I think he rolled all 7 straight to win third
Yeah,
that's
place as a
wild.
true freshman is really impressive. And, you know, just doing Penn State things there. Um, I liked Ty Waters too. Speaking of true freshmen from West Virginia,
Yeah, he was real
um,
impressive.
to me, he just seems like, maybe it's just the way the TV is, but he just seems like the biggest 149-pounder I've ever seen in my life.
He is kind of tall.
Yeah,
Like
he's like
6'3".
tall, lanky, but like also kind of thick, and maybe it's tattoos that make him look bigger. I don't know. One question I did have, and I'm not sure how it felt in the arena, but Lovett chose top third period, did he
Mhm.
not, in the semi against Henson?
Yeah.
And then Henson got out. You know, what were your guys' thoughts through that? Was that seemed like a very one-off kind of scenario there? Why not take bottom?
I think Caleb made the right choice. He knew that he struggled to get out from under him, so he
Yeah,
went neutral second period. That was a great choice, and it was tied up going into third. I was mind blown that that's what he did.
yeah. I don't know why Lovett would just wouldn't go down, because Henson, yeah, he can ride, but he's not, he's not freaking Ridge Lovett on top where he's going to
Yeah,
ride you for 2 minutes and possibly turn you. So I just thought that was bizarre. I wasn't sure if there was some kind of
I think
feeling in the arena.
I think that Ridge Lovett thought he was Ridge Lovett and was going to ride him out.
Well,
So,
that's a lot of
but
confidence there.
yeah,
That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. That's crazy
Yeah,
to me.
I think in their match in Vegas, Ridge got riding time.
Mhm.
So I think it was a confidence thing. I'm better on top now than what I was when we wrestled in Vegas. So why wouldn't I go for my strong suit now? Yeah, obviously hindsight, you know, not a
But
good
even if you
call.
get riding time and Henson still does get out, it's still 1-1.
Certainly,
He'd
and
have to ride out for a full 2 minutes, which is good luck doing that to
a
a guy like Henson. But
yeah,
just what I thought.
and I also think that it was one of those things where, and this is just speculation, right? He gets the riding time point. Henson gets out. He feels, even though he had yet to score any points, he's confident he can get a takedown in the third period to win the match. So like that's my thought, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna take top. I'm gonna ride him until I get my 1 minute. If he gets out, fine. If he doesn't, I win. Um, I just think it was a ultra confident move in himself to do that. So that would
And
be
then
my
then
only
he hit the
thought.
semi slide right after that, the sixth. So it's like
Mhm.
it just a heart crushing loss for a guy like Lovett, who was top seed, expected to win the thing, and loses that match and ends up 6th place. Obviously still good, but not what he expected.
Yeah, certainly not what he expected. I mean, you don't expect that at all. I mean, he ends up losing to Parco again in the 5th and 6th place match, and just wasn't he really wasn't himself
Yeah,
after losing that
Majored
match.
by Kasich.
yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, that was the eye opener, was that Kasich really put it on him. Um, and Austin, you already said it. Hats off to Kasich. Like that's really hard to do. You lose the first one, and then you wrestle all the way back 7 straight matches and end up winning. I know it was Aaron Brooks' win that solidified the record. But if Kasich doesn't do what he does, they don't win. That they win, but they don't get the record. There isn't 172.5 points on the board.
yeah. He also had 4 majors on the backside, a
Yeah.
pin, and 2
Mhm.
decisions. So he
Exactly.
wasn't just winning by a point; he was laying it on dudes, putting points on the board.
Yeah.
Tough for Ridge though, losing to the Penn State backup.
Yeah,
It
really
does.
tough.
It does. I mean, it was the world of Big Ten backups at 49 and 74. Rocco Welsh not even in the lineup at the start of the year,
Yeah.
and ends up having to step in and coming out of red shirt and makes the finals, right? So I can see him making the finals again. He did really well. Obviously we'll get to 174, but yeah, I mean, Kasich not even being in the lineup either. Injuries give guys big opportunities, and those guys fully took advantage of them. So very impressed by him. And yeah, I mean, I think his performance was the X factor performance for Penn State. Without him cleaning up on the backside, they're not hitting 172.5 points.